Welcome back to the workbench, guys. Just going to work on finishing up our weathering project here on this convention boxcar from MTH that we're converting into a lease unit for our Lake Erie Midwestern boxcar pool. So today what we're doing, I've been getting more and more looks at this roof, and I'm going to go ahead and fade it down, and then we're going to do just a little bit of rust work on the roof. Not much, because in theory this car was recently painted, and when I say recent, let's just say maybe it's been on the railroad for a few years at this point. So we're just going to get some light fading, consistent with what you would expect to see from the sun, and we're going to do a little bit of rust work, and then we're going to finish it off with some very light powder work, primarily around the trucks and the underside of the car, and on the little bit on the couplers, and we'll do some splatter effects for kick up, which is real world. That's what happens on these things. The car in front of them is going to be kicking up mud and stuff. But why don't we go ahead and get started. All right, so I just got a little bit, very little, TCP 005, which is just your basic TCP True Color Paints white. And all I'm gonna do is fade primarily around the edges and along the ridges of the box car itself. It's not going to take us very long, and it's not going to take much paint to accomplish. So why don't we get started? Just getting a little bit of white across the tops of everything, just to represent sun bleaching. I'm putting very little paint on, just enough to take the edge off that silver. Give it a little bit of a sun bleached effect. And right at the very tops of the box car edges as well. It is a minuscule amount of paint that I'm putting on. This would be real tricky to do without an airbrush. All right, that should be good. Let's clean out the airbrush, and I'm gonna move to applying a little bit of rust. Okay, I got the roof kind of to my liking. So now, let me see if I can get the camera set up a little bit more so on these trucks. I actually really like the way the trucks are looking at this point. So I'm not really gonna try to do anything drastic to them. Again, if you really see a freight car come rolling by, trucks usually look more grimy than rusty, unless they're not being used. So now on these trucks, again, from experience, this effect is gonna dissipate pretty quick with the dull coat. So all I'm gonna do is put a little bit of a rusty effect, kind of more as highlights than anything else, knowing that when I come back across, and we'll go ahead and pull this one so you can see me do this one over here too. When I come back across with the dull coat, it's actually gonna remove most of this, and I'm not smashing it in or rub it in. I'm just kind of running it over all the surfaces so that it's picking up more or less like an accent. And most of what is there, it's actually gonna go away. And I'm fine with that. That's the effect that I'm looking for. So getting real close to being done with this one. Just gonna drop a little bit of the powders in there and just gently work over them with the brush. Now, I will say the one part of trucks that tend to have a little bit of rust on them are the springs. So for whatever reason, those springs, maybe it's because they're getting worked up and down as the truck moves across or as the boxcar moves across the joints and, you know, undulations in the track and whatnot. I'm gonna put just a little bit of rust-colored powder around the door edges. Again, it's almost not even enough to tell there's a rusty tone there. It's just an accent. It's just accentuating stuff. This car is about ready. Come on. This car is about ready to be dull coated one final time. And then all that'll be left for me to do, I'll put safety stripes on it. And my layout is not at my place. So my brother and I are building our layout in his basement in Cleveland. I live in the Columbus area. So I have an entire 8-car pool of these that I'm making. And this one is number 3, I believe, that I have done. So the next time I get up to the layout, I'm gonna put the safety stripes on. We'll get them on the layout so you guys can see them. But why don't I go ahead and I am just going to actually drop a little bit of, just to represent some dust, a little bit more of this neutral gray tint pan pastel. I'm not cleaning the brush. It's more of you could call it a dry wash, although a dry brush effect. I'm just trying to, again, catch some of the subtle highlights and bring out some of the detail. I'll hit the ladders, the upper edges. I'm gonna actually bring this down across the doors. We're going to lose a lot of this. This is really gonna go away and dissipate. But all I'm looking to do, especially since this is a black car, is bring out and accentuate some of the details on the car. And if I decide that enough details are still not evident, I'll dry brush this with some very, very light gray acrylic at the very end, and that'll be it. I won't dull coat it again. Just get this side real quick. Okay, I'm gonna lightly hit the trucks, just accentuate some of the lines on the truck. Now, I may mix up some grimy black, a custom grimy black mix of acrylic. What I use for that is a little bit of black and primarily burnt umber and just a shade of brown. And it makes like a really nice sort of post-rust / grime black color that really looks nice on the inner dishes of the wheels. But I'll do that very last step, and I'll show you that on the finished product when we roll everything. But we're about done here, guys. I really like the way. All right, guys, we're almost done. The last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some kick up splatter effect that I like to do. And first saw this on a YouTube channel I like to visit for weathering techniques, Dan's Railroad. I'll put the link on the screen to his channel. Very, very talented young man. His weathering is just is just out of sight on a whole nother level. But I'm gonna put a 3-layer level of kick up. And all I'm doing, I've got, this is the piece of styrofoam that I used, and I was taking that piece of cardboard, that straight piece of cardboard, and dipping it in my double colors. It was burnt umber and red oxide, and using that just to make some rust lines on the roof and a couple places on the side of the car. What I've done is I've taken that paint and I've watered it down heavily so that it'll splatter very easily. And I'm just taking a really cheap paintbrush, moving it over to the edge. You can see where the flanges of the rail of the wheels are down here. And I'm just going to actually splatter paint onto the back side of the car in this general vicinity where the kick up would occur. As you might very well expect, there's no exact science to this, and you do not have to be super precise with where it goes. Now, what I like to do, start off with a darker layer of kind of like a muddy brown, which this burnt umber and oxide red mix does a really nice job of that. And then what I'm gonna do, and that'll be kind of your really kind of caked on base layer underneath of kick up. And then what I like to do is come back in with, I add a little bit of black to that to kind of darken it down. I'm gonna do that right now. Be right back. All right, so I've created a really nice kind of muddy black. It's just a little dot of apple barrel black acrylic. I'm just using these cheap apple barrel acrylics that you can get at Walmart. This is just regular old black. And this is just mixed over the top of that burnt umber and red oxide mix. And I'm just gonna come right behind and do the same exact thing. I'm gonna splatter this over here. Now this is kind of watery, so we're gonna just let this kind of flash off. We're gonna let this water dry on its own. You can help it along with a hair dryer if you so choose. Not necessary. Just at, when it's wet, you don't want to be careful not to touch it. Make sure that you don't mess it up. This will be the second of our third layers. So I'm just coming to the other side of the car, doing something very similar. And I'm just creating a layer effect. Now, if you wanted this to be more obvious, and what I would do, this is a black car, so it's gonna just naturally be a little less obvious, but on a lighter colored car, a white car, a yellow car, a light gray car, what I would do is I would airbrush in just sort of some hazy dirt and then splatter over that, because you're not gonna have the hard broken splatters in real life that we're pretty much creating here. But because this car is dulled down, because it's a black car, and because I airbrushed grime onto it already, it makes it sort of unnecessary. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do, I usually like to come in with the Vallejo, but I think on this car what I'm gonna use, I'm just gonna stay with the apple barrel, and I'm gonna come in, my final color I like to add on there is something that represents a lighter mud, a lighter dirt, and in this case we're gonna use khaki. Now this is just, I'm gonna mix right into all this. This is all pretty wet on here. This is gonna create a nice sort of grimy gray color. And this is gonna be the third layer. And then we're gonna be done. We'll let it dry. And we're gonna call this this project essentially a wrap, like I mentioned when I get up to the layout. I'm gonna put some safety stripes on it, but that'll just take a short while. And we're just gonna splatter in a little bit of additional kick up here in this third tone. And it, you kind of focus it at the bottom of the car. Not a whole lot of this stuff gets up towards the top of the car. turn it around. The dull coat has dried at this point, so don't have to worry about that. That stuff dries really fast. I took that outside and sprayed it really quick because it's like 24 degrees outside right now. So sprayed it outside on the patio, brought it inside where it's a little warmer, and just kind of let it dry. All right. Well, why don't I show you guys what this thing looks like? Pretty happy with how it turned out. The Tester's dull coat really does a wonderful job on these cars. Again, I wouldn't use any other dull coat, but you can kind of see our patched out areas are very evident, which is what we want. Just some nice discoloration on the trucks, not heavily rusted or corroded or fallen apart. We've got very minor rust marks coming from the top where we weathered our top with the little technique, putting it on the edge of a piece of cardboard, just lightly dabbing a 2-color. I suppose you could use a 3-color mix. If I was going to go 3 colors, I probably would have put a little black in that mix, but I literally was just dabbing the edge of the card in there. You use a business card or a piece of very thin cardstock and just gently tap it on there. And then we came across with some gray and a little bit of rust-colored pan pastel, dull coated right over that. It really faded out the top. This was a really edgy, bright silver that now looks sun faded after we put the white undertones. The edges of the cars, it's just nice and it's seen some use. Now our kick-up is wet at the very end, but that's gonna dry. That's gonna dry and look really nice as the water rolls off. We'll have some nice splattered kick-up up there. This side, I really like how it turned out. We got an additional tag like we do on the other side, a couple tags down here, and the graffiti that I put in. The white airbrushing that went in behind it just accentuates the edges, but it allows all the colors to shine through. Got a couple rust scratches over here where maybe the car took a little bit of damage getting loaded. Again, the trucks are kicked down. I chose not to paint the dishes. You know, on our high rail, three rail O-scale cars, the trucks are pretty much have a natural weathered color to them. I may down the road paint those, but I'm really pretty happy with how they look. But overall, pretty cool car. I think it'll fit in really nicely in our lease pool. All right, hey guys, I really appreciate everybody sticking with me through this one. I know there's no shortage of weathering videos out on the internet, so I appreciate you taking the time to see how I do mine. These are relatively light. I've got some that are very heavily weathered, and I got some that really are just dull coated with Tester's dull coat. That really kicks down that factory shiny plastic look. And if you're afraid to kind of tackle these full bore, man, just hit them with some dull coat. That'll transform your fleet amazingly. Like I said, probably within the next week or so, I'll get a short out showing you guys these things being pulled around the layout together. All right. Hey, thanks for visiting. Everybody have a wonderful week, and look forward to seeing you all again soon at the Lake Erie and Midwestern Railroad. Take care.